I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
And I'm Al Nicole France.
And that makes us the CRM Playaz. Wow, that was so smooth. I like
It's
that
almost
one.
like we've done that a few times
It's
before.
literally the first time it's ever been smooth. So
Out of the 1200th week, this is the first time that we actually got it right. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We'll see you next. Oh, wait.
That's right. Just quit while we literally need to quit while we're ahead. Right?
Or at least not that far behind. Anyway, all right. So it's Blur's Day. Who told us that who mentioned the Blur's Day thing?
Somebody. I can't remember. Yeah, it was just last week too, which shows you how Blur's Day it is, right? So
it is extremely blurry today.
Right.
But anyway, we will persevere. We will carry on because we actually have a really cool show. We got some great guests. We're gonna hold off for them for a while, but believe me, you're gonna love them. We even got a nice setup video clip that really set the stage for that one.
Yeah, but it will for sure.
So, but before all that, I mean, we got a lot of things to talk about. I always like to let you go and talk about the happy hour that we had, but I'd rather reverse the order a little bit and let you give folks an update on BYOB.
Yeah, man, it's rolling. So we've got for BYOB 2020, which for those of you listening in for the first time, it's it's literally a corporate band competition that the CRM Playaz produced, and we now have 13 bands. Newest.
Can you name them all?
No. I literally
put him on the spot, Ben. Put him on the spot.
I tried last week. It did not work. I forgot. You
gotta have you gotta have a little post-it on your monitor there, Paul. Come on.
Here's the problem with that whole thing is I only forget one, but that's like the worst thing to do is forget one, not two or three. Then it's just you can blame it my just personally faulty memory. But then it's like the least. It's like, oh, there's one you forgot. We're the least important, right? So that doesn't go. But I will tell you who the new one is. It's Genesis has just joined us.
Yes.
And I will tell you this too. As of this morning, another band is now in progress. Not definitive yet, but it's a decent chance that they will be coming on board, bringing us up to 14, and hopefully we'll have that to announce by next week. And
so you're oh, I thought you're gonna break some news here. Like
no, I can't yet. I mean, the only news is we're heading to the optimal 15, right? We're on the way.
I like it.
13 in hand. We did have one band who I will not mention out of courtesy to them, who did back out. Right. And
so is that like protecting the identity, but not
not the over ambition?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. El Nicole, you have a way with words. I must they over ambition. But they're not a tiny company, and the one you would have expected to stay in. That's all I can tell you. But they are out. So here we are.
Well, you know, Genesis is in, and that could mean
to live with that. So how many times have you Jesus, Alan, you're like 3 weeks behind everything. Right. So Brent's been talking about that forever. Phil Collins.
I was saying Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel.
Exactly.
I mean,
let's just do it. Let's do this right now.
That's the question.
Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, Genesis. But this is not that one. Okay, right. So we're done. Right. Enough. I'm glad there's no corporate company called Beetle. That's all I know.
But I have to say, we can't call these guys the Optimal 15. That would be like a terrible name for this.
Don't worry, we're not. Optimal 15 means we reached the limit we can probably handle.
It's like the Hateful Eight. The Optimal 15.
Look at the Sweet 16, but Optimal 15.
Oh, now maybe we'll up the ante to 16 bands, and then we can call them the Sweet 16.
Well, then we can have all the brackets, and we can.
There's so many different ways we can do that. The answer is very obvious, isn't it?
Well, since his company is actually in it, I mean,
Yeah.
You should
think
you
you
should
have
check
a
out the competition.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Alan, you got a vested interest, man. You got to see the competition.
Okay, I got to get to Sven here. He's got a couple of things. First of all, that's just blasphemy.
Oh my God. He means Freddie Prinze.
Uh, that's still too close. I'm sorry. But anyway, let me go back to Sven's. First of all, good to see you, Sven. Let me go back to Sven's first one, and he has a note about where's the CRM Playaz snack box, and that all goes back to I posted this on LinkedIn. I put let me put this picture up because this I was quite impressed with what Salesforce sent out. So
I got mine too. Delish.
I know.
Yeah, I was eating it during the thing because on the East Coast, so it was like lunchtime. Kind of be a little hard to eat that at if you're over on the West Coast. Like
I haven't tucked in yet.
Yeah, have an aged salami at 9 in the morning.
Cold cuts for breakfast. It's a thing in some places, but
it is like Coke in the morning. Sometimes.
Yeah, neither of those is on my list personally, but yeah.
I posted this because I thought it was really cool that they sent this out for the analyst event that they had today. So yesterday it arrived like in the evening, and I took that picture, and I couldn't wait to dive. I actually did not open it until today. So, but Sven, I'll tell you right now. Let me drop that. Let me bring up Sven's comment again so that we can just quickly.
I actually thought Sven was talking about what was in the green room. Like
that's true. That could be true. Yeah,
like
I thought
cronuts.
That's what I meant. I thought somehow he was wandering around in the green room and didn't see anything to eat. So I have to still get those damn brookies, man.
You know what we should do is we can talk to the Microsoft guys and get like some sort of VR setup so that we can actually have a green room, use a little Oculus stuff,
That would be awesome, actually.
All right, I don't even understand this one, Thomas. What does this mean?
Central, is that like a time?
I don't know.
Like
he said
time zone?
Central European time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, would be fine for the aged salami.
The only disappointment was that it did not come with wine as well, which would have, and I'm not suggesting that everything needs to include alcohol, but it would have just added a little something.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Aged salami is the first. I mean, I don't eat that meat at all anymore, so didn't eat it.
Yep, we figured it out, Thomas. Thanks.
Thank you. No, we're there, baby. We got
you. All right, so I'm not going to say a lot about the Salesforce event because, quite honestly, I'm scared. I've been scarred for life. Like 3 years ago, we were at one of those analyst events, and a rather interesting slide came up, and I didn't see any NDA on it. So it wasn't there. So I tweeted it out. And within 2 minutes, I had people like from Business Insider and our buddy Ron Miller from TechCrunch asking me questions about it. And then, about a minute after that, when I don't know how they were able to do this, but I tweeted it out, and with 5 minutes, there was an article up. And they were all
generated article based.
And each of the articles had a link or an embedded image of my tweet, which immediately I was asked to take it down, but like damage was done. So I think at all of these analyst summit events, when they do that in the beginning, the please no tweets or no slides for confidential, they should just go ahead and just call that the Brent Leary rule, because I don't think that rule had ever been like put out there like it is now.
It's now called the unsafe harbor.
Exactly. Yeah. You seem to have gone hard over on putting NDA, like confidential, on every single slide anyway. So I think you're out of the woods. But I was looking at some of those slides thinking, is this seriously confidential? Because it doesn't really seem like there's much that's confidential.
I'm not. I honestly, I found 2 or 3 things like super interesting, and I'm afraid to mention anything. I have no idea what I can say and what I can't say, so I'm not mentioning them.
I'm just going to throw out one thing that came up in the conversation. So this was not on a slide, so I can talk about it. But I was really intrigued that the whole topic of event-driven architecture actually came up during the discussion today, because to me, that's a big one. I mean, talking about, hey, like, where are we actually moving in terms of modern applications, business applications? And I think especially for anything to do with customers and and customer experience, that is actually a really big deal. So we only just glanced the surface of that one, but definitely looking forward to following up with them in more detail.
And I absolutely, I don't know what I'm going to be saying here, but everything I'm saying is under NDA from me. So I agree. Look, in a world where microservices are beginning to define things, event-driven architectures are literally the sibling, right? I mean, they are literally the sibling for that. And I found that exceptionally intriguing. They didn't really answer it either, but it was you who brought it up. So
yeah. My ears went like boing.
Yeah. The question was forming is like I could hear the fingers typing away feverishly to get the question in. All I'm gonna say is, and I am serious. I'm not saying anything substantive because I'm just afraid of that right now. But what I thought was really great was Monica's little girl. When she was doing her demo, I thought that was
under
just
NDA.
Well,
don't out her.
If it was, Liz took a picture of it and tweeted it already. So go get Liz. Go get El Nicole's, double duo person there.
Exactly.
But no, that kind of leads into this thing that this research that Adobe just came out with, and we talked a little bit about it on the happy hour. But you seem to get more real with these conversations, and when you see things like a son or a daughter innocently playing a role in these Zoom events, or when your dog comes up and wants to get patted, or if you have a dog like Ann Chin's, who I swear did not seem to look like it moved at all since the last event. Like 3 months ago. Funny?
I literally privately sent Ann a message about that.
That is so
about you want to hear
thing. He's got his mark, she's trained. So like, hey, on your mark,
All right, so you want to hear something even a little funnier than that? I sent her the exact same thing after you did, and she laughed and said, "Ha, Paul already sent the exact same thing."
No, it was hysterical. The dog literally, the dog doesn't move. She doesn't move. She's
not at all.
And she was every time you have a conversation with Ann in that room, that dog is asleep in that position and never moves. I thought maybe it was a dog pillow.
I don't know. And then one of the presenters, I forget one of the presenters, his dog started, doing stuff, and it just adds something to this thing. And I put a comment in there and said, look, when demos are going on, I typically don't smile or laugh, or pretty much don't remember anything that's really stands out on those things. But that adds something to that, the whole presentation, seeing it, and it's not scripted. Little girl's just there with her mom, and then she put her arm on her mom's shoulder.
Yeah.
Then she went to the
also
back,
pulling her collar and pulling it back and forth. Right, it was really funny.
I just thought that was really funny, and so I wanted to kind of set the stage, with that conversation, because Adobe just yesterday. Let me get the full screen here. Give the full screen action here. So Adobe just literally came out yesterday with this study on consumer. I forget. It's like 1,000 people around consumer communications and how we're communicating and how that's impacting kind of business. And one of the things they asked about was this idea of, do you actually feel closer to your coworkers distancing physically and doing your meetings with Zoom or whatever the tool is that you're using? And look at this, and particularly if you are a parent, 57% of parents said they feel closer to their coworkers despite the physical difference. Bonding over homeschooling children, adjusted work schedules due to lack of childcare, occasional guest appearances of children during conference. I can't agree more about that. I mean, I don't have a kid, but seeing what Monica with her little daughter, I was like, this makes me feel like I know her a little bit more. Well, I didn't know her before, really, but I just felt like, man, it's so nice to see people in like a real environment and not that kind of the sterile conference room setting. And when you see stats like this, it makes it's kind of weird that you learn more about somebody the further you're out away. But it's interesting that it's not just me and it's not just you, all of us here, but it seems to be the majority of folks.
Well, it's interesting to me because we were actually having this conversation in our Hump Day huddle that Liz and I run on Wednesday mornings. This is our get together for folks that are doing CX and enterprises. And what we were really talking about was not so much the internal relationship, so the coworker relationship, but more the relationship with customers, right? Because we've got the same kind of deal between buyers and sellers now, especially in a B2B context. And it's really interesting because what we sort of agreed as a group is that on one hand, it's certainly been a challenge when you can't meet your customers in person because things have become a lot more structured because they have to be. But on the other hand, it's like more structured, but actually less formal because you have all these kinds of interruptions and visions into people's daily lives, where they live, where they work, what's going on, who's at home, all this kind of stuff. And I think that actually is in a lot of ways a big way of overcoming kind of barriers or, distance in a relationship in a sort of emotional sense as opposed to a physical sense. So it's really fascinating to watch how that dynamic has very notably, but in some very subtle ways, changed over the last 6 years.
I actually think some of it's not that subtle. It's almost like you're seeing a globalized kind of humanization of things, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples that kind of reflect it in a really sort of odd way. And on the one hand, you're seeing a rise of these new kind of internet celebrities who are not, I don't mean like influencers who have 10, I mean, people who are ordinary people who decide to get through, let's say, the crisis to sing to other people. And all of a sudden they've got, a million subscribers, they're being interviewed on Good Morning America, whatever. But one way or the other, they have a record label. I mean, but when you watch them, you're just watching two people with good voices. One, and both of them are basically, it's like a good one is these who are particularly notable is this one, Matt and Savannah Shaw, right? It's a dad and his 15-year-old daughter, and both of them have spectacularly good voices. And, they have just taken off, but it's just every time you watch them, you just realize, wow, he really loves his daughter. And it's just a blue collar family, right? And that doesn't go away. But people feel much closer to them because of that. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of it, and this is an interesting example. If you remember in the very beginning I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, in the very beginning of the crisis, John Krasinski ran SGN, Some Good News, right? And it was just, everyone watched it. I mean, it was just like an amazing show. And he was always interacting with frontline workers and little kids and others, but at the same time bringing celebrities on. He ran, for example, a virtual prom, and people like Weekend were singing at it, and people like that. But in the meantime, it was real kids who would like to see scenes that were shot from home, and not even that great quality, were of like brothers and sisters dancing, or dad and daughter, or mom and son, and they were dressed up in the prom out clothes and everything. So the whole, and he would do a lot of that. It was just an insanely popular show, and everyone felt very close to him. particularly. And here's why I'm bringing this example though. So then he stopped after about 8 episodes, and I used to carry it on my post, let us not forget hopeful news, and he announces that CBS has picked up the show and will be running it like as a show. He's not going to be on it, but it's picked. So he sold it. And then he was ripped to shreds for that. I mean, he actually destroyed the connections he had with a lot of people because he ultimately commercialized it, and people were taking that very personally. They said, no, you connected to us. You can't just do that. But that's a reflection of all of this, and how this all is working, which is there's this highly, deeply human connection. And, I'm not going to get into it now because no time, but I actually go through a lot of the reasons for that in the presentation I gave at Contact Center World today. And why that's the case, why people have deeper need for socialization, right, than ever before. And, but I don't find this surprising in the slightest. And the other thing I don't like, one of the things I don't like in the discussion that I'm hearing out there is that people are trying to say, well, it was better and this was worse. It's just different. Okay. It's not better or worse.
It gives a different perspective of the people. Like, right. You don't see them interacting with their dogs or with their children at your office. That's not what happens. But when they're in their home environment, just like we saw today, it happens. And the more it happens, it just happens. It's not scripted. The more you feel like you can connect and feel connected with these people. And I think that's what's going on now. I want to pop up this last thing because I think it must play a role, because we're not just talking to coworkers. A lot of people are doing Zooms with clients, leads, prospects, and they're communicating via these Zoom channels in a time of a pandemic where, let's face it, a lot of people are hurting or in need. And so I was really shocked at this stat from this survey. Brands emails during pandemic. Are brands striking the right tone in emails? I thought before I saw the results, I was like, hey, this is going to be a good one. 93% say yeah. Brands are actually leveraging email in a more, I guess, empathetic way. And I was like, really? And then I started thinking maybe there's something to do with these Zoom calls that are allowing people to, understand each other, feel each other a little bit more. So maybe that's carrying over to some of these email interactions. Is that possibly what's going on with this?
Go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to say, I mean, Paul, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this one, but it strikes me that, again, it's this idea that, there's less pretense because we're all out of our element here. We're all dealing with something that is kind of an equalizer. And I also think there's a lot more humor involved, which goes a long way. People are really trying to communicate. Brands are trying to communicate what they want to get across, but they're also trying to do it with a sense of irreverence, which I think is actually really helpful and effective. Not always, but in a lot of cases. And I personally, I think that's a move in the right direction. They take themselves a little bit less seriously, which I think overall has been a good move.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, the bar isn't lower, but it's more relaxed too.
Yeah,
and that's the other side. You have to just take into account. It's like actually the point you were making earlier, Brent. I was on a call with a small company CEO, and he's in Israel at the moment, and he's with his family. His family is in Israel with him. And in the middle of it, two of his kids started having a fight, like arguing with each other. So he had to get up and go. And it didn't bother me in the slightest, life at home.
No, I was thinking maybe you start taking, 5 on the little guy or, something like that.
Well, it wasn't. I didn't see it, unfortunately. Apparently the little guy's the one who usually wins the fight. Right. But he's all apologetic and everything. It's no big deal, right? Life is life, and I think it wasn't a big deal, right? So, the thing is that I think we've all come to a point where we're accepting the fact that this environment, propagates that kind of more relaxed attitude and bar toward things. I mean, look, I still get pissed off at things, and a lot of them actually, but
When the Yankees lose, you know.
I'm always, that's just, don't even get there. They were losing 3-2 when I got on this, right? So but at the same time, you know, you recognize that that things that you used to just outrage you really don't matter as much anymore. And that's the other side. This perspective has changed too, right? I mean, given what we're all going through at this point, a bad email is hardly a major problem in your life, right? So I just think the bar is very much more relaxed. And if that 93%, that question was, let's say, asked about some empathetic thing prior to this crisis, it wouldn't be anywhere close to that number.
No,
Right.
maybe it's because, like you said, we're everybody's in a crisis, and even the people that are trying to sell you stuff, they are feeling the crisis, and maybe that makes for some group empathy. And my question, and I talked to one of the folks over at Adobe, and I'll be posted tomorrow about the results. And one of the things I was curious, or I asked him about, is we're all in the pandemic. We're all kind of, you know, in the same boat. More empathy is being kind of spread all around. But what happens after the pandemic? What happens when we're finally over the hump? Things are, you know, on the rise. Everybody's feeling a little bit more positive about the situation. Does that mean that all this great interaction that was built because we're in this, you know, situation all together, and apparently the empathy is being felt all around? Do businesses then, once, we're back to usual now. Now I'm going back to the hard sell. Now I'm going back to the, you know, everything is just about me trying to sell you stuff, and empathy be damned. Do you see this as just a temporary situation, or do you see this becoming more of the next normal?
50-50 on that to some extent. The reason is I don't see this sustaining itself forever. Look, the next normal doesn't mean absolutely brand new. It means a permutation and evolution of what was, right? And consequently, some of the old habits will reassert and some won't. I don't know which are which, and there's no way of telling really. So it's a little hard to really say, yeah, it's going to go backwards. Yeah, it's going to change irrevocably.
Well, it looks like there's a couple of folks that have some ideas, some thoughts. Much will move back to the old situation. Happens here in Germany right now.
I think some of that is a function of time too, because it's all about solidifying habits, right? And I think the longer that we're in a situation, and you know, for various reasons, it's a little different here in the U.S. But it's interesting what you're saying, Paul, because I do actually, maybe I'm cautiously optimistic. It's probably a good way of putting it, but I do think what we're starting to see is companies recognizing that actually building quality interactions and quality relationships with an audience that is actually really interested in engaging with them has at least as much, if not more value than just going for volume. And I do think some of that is going to stick. And how it plays out, of course, is still something that we're going to have to watch carefully. But I really do think that there are enough experiments happening right now. And, you know, I hear what Dan is saying. And yeah,
Dan is not having it. Dan is not buying this a bit.
And there's still plenty that is off the mark, let's face it. But I do think there's a lot more that is. And I think that is actually something that companies are really starting to observe and hopefully understand in slightly different terms.
Yeah, again, it kind of went to the very early discussion we had on the show probably a month or two ago on the are we a sprint to the finish line of digital transformation or a sprint to the starting line? And I'm of the starting line. Right?
He's the starting line.
I
yes.
am the starting line guy. I don't think we're even vaguely close to a sprint.
Well, there's no end state to transformation. That's
not even that. It's just like the problem is you're dealing with mythologies that people are propagating there, right?
Yep.
Which is, you know, this has sparked massive digital. No, it's not. It's sparked. What is sparked is a lot more use of digital tools, which is not the same thing at all. right? I mean, it's related, meaning it might get to a point where you say, oh, well, given results I'm seeing, maybe I'll change my business model, maybe I'll improve my culture, things like that, which then will end up that way. But this sprint to the starting line, I think we're kind of in the same thing in terms of, as you say, the habituation of kind of this new approach to engagement and experience with customers. But
Thomas makes an interesting point. I mean, let's look at it from the terms of the pandemic. We're told that we should wear masks and we should socially distance, and that will help this whole thing kind of dissipate. We can't seem to do that, and that's kind of another way of not displaying empathy or not displaying any kind of community good. So maybe there's a portion of folks who are like, we are feeling like we're all in this together, but there's a pretty significant a bunch of people who are saying, I'm not in this together at all. I'm in this for myself. I want to do certain things. I don't care if it disrupts the greater good
or kills people. I mean, it's look, there's a lot of idiots in this world, right? And I mean, there really are. I am an eternal optimist on people, and I love people, but I'm always astounded at the complete idiots. Look, one thing very interestingly, there's been a lot of studies on how people communicate in crises, right, and what they look for in the communication. And one of the things they do is they always will, the way they kind of think this through is like, first thing they do is they simplify the message. They always simplify the messages they're hearing. The second thing they do is they hold on to their beliefs as long as they can. The third thing they do also, and this is, ultimate, is that they will, I guess the best way to put it is they'll kind of misinterpret what they hear often as they don't. And so, and they will believe the first thing they hear. Right. And that's a big part of the way they do things in a crisis. And this is studies done by CDC, the psychology of crisis, actually study that did that. Now, the interesting thing is, I want to sort of reinforce it by pointing out one thing that's very apparent, which is,
by the way, just to let you know, our guests are here. So,
okay, so I'll finish with this. And so, you remember in the very beginning of the crisis, there was the CDC and WHO and others said, no, you don't need masks, right? In the very beginning. Now, I want you to take into account what I just said against that, right? Simplify the message. Believe the first thing you hear. Hold on to your beliefs, right? And now you look, that was very damaging. Let's just say that. It was a very damaging and obviously wrong, and very, very damaging, because people literally glom onto it and hold. Right. I'm not talking about the QAnon idiots, but I'm talking more about just regular people who just don't want to believe things change. Right. So and they have to do things like that to protect others. So but that's how people respond in crises. So you have to get past that. You have to change that kind of conception. And it's much harder later than it is earlier. Right. So, and we're at that stage. But that's one of the things that also is why I'm sort of 50-50 on how this is going to play out. I don't know. I mean, I'm basically unclear because of that kind of hold on to your beliefs, believe the first thing you hear, simplify the message, right? So,
all right.
Sorry,
I just want to get a quick answer so we can bring our guests on. Do you think these numbers hold up after we get past COVID-19, or do they go back to kind of the norm?
I think they're going to go back. Whether they go back completely is, a good question. Hopefully not. Hopefully businesses have learned enough to figure out how to engage with specific customer groups more effectively, so they do a better job and the baseline moves up. But I certainly wouldn't be optimistic enough to say it'll stay at this level.
And I absolutely just straight +1 agree.
Oh, I know Dan must agree with you. Dan was not happy with that.
Dan thinks it's going to flip.
Yeah.
7% will feel that brands are striking the right tone.
Okay. There's a lot to discuss on that. I mean, we got to cut it off now, but there's some interesting findings there. like to dig into a little bit later, possibly. Oh, and by the way, Thomas is definitely not agreeing.
Yeah.
I kind of figured, Thomas, that was going to
No.
be the way you were going. We're not going to be talking about TikTok and Oracle today, Spin.
I have a feeling that's not on the agenda.
That is not on the agenda.
Half of it is.
Well, yeah. The Oracle part, Sven actually set us up. Why don't we just go ahead and yes, thanks, Sven. Although I know Sven is like trying to cause a little trouble there with that one, but no, we are talking about. I like to call them, although I've never really talked to them before. I think I heard Paul use this description of the Bonnie and Clyde of design. Is that kind of what you guys
bonded at the hip and always shooting?
Is that taking Oracle as hostages? Either way, we're in favor. So.
Well, let's just say their names fully. Besides, Bonnie is Jenny Lamb. You know, I guess I'm going to say that SVP. I got to make sure I get this right because you guys have kind of similar titles.
I'm Bonnie. She's Clyde.
We're just designers.
All right, Jenny Lamb, SVP of brand design. Brand design, is that it? Because I know one of you is a brand design, SVP of brand design, and one of you is SVP of user design, right? User experience design. How did I get this wrong?
It's okay. It's all good. Our titles are actually just SVP design and user experience. That's it. We have the same job.
See, on LinkedIn, there is a slight difference on your titles. That's what threw me. One had user experience, one had brand design. All right. It's all good.
Right. All right.
It's all in the design. But before we let them talk, because this is all because of Paul, I wanted to play a little clip to kind of introduce you two, but only one of you guys is actually in the clip. But I think because you guys are Bonnie and Clyde, you kind of yin and yang things. So let me play this short clip, and then we'll get into a little discussion. All right, if I do this, and then I do.
This is so cool.
I can only do this.
I want to have a live TV show.
So,
oh my God.
These are dark.
Turn it up.
And the dark ages are the time between when you put away the Lego for the last time as a kid and you decide as an adult that it is okay to play with a kid's toy. Started out with my then 4-year-old. Oh, should buy the kid some Lego. That stuff's cool. Walked in the Lego store, bought him this. It's totally appropriate for a 4-year-old. Out of time, but just very quickly.
I think this is my favorite part.
See if I can do this quick. Because there aren't enough head logos around here. Let's see here. Okay. Doop. Doop. Doop.
Let me take back and bring everybody back in. That was really cool. You actually got a chance to do a TED talk and do Legos and get people and tell jokes. Are you a comedian? Because you had them like eating out of the palm of your hand with the Lego building with the jokes that you were telling all tied up there.
So here's the secret part that they didn't put in the video that I will tell you, which is super fun. So did the talk, went well. And then after I left the stage stagehand came and took the Lego that I built and took it away. And then they were about to introduce the next speaker and the audience started booing. And they booed and booed and booed and they wouldn't stop. And then finally, after like a really uncomfortable 30 to 45 seconds, the stagehand came back, put the Lego back on the stage, everyone clapped, and then they moved on.
That's awesome.
That is.
So, okay, guys, first of all, I honestly think what you two have done at Oracle is brilliant. Not good, brilliant. And and it actually is not only impacted Oracle from the standpoint of how, how the product looks and how the company kind of looks, but you've actually gone well beyond that and impacted the culture in a way that, look, honestly, I used to hate Oracle. Really couldn't stand
Hold
the
it back.
company.
Hold it back.
No, I just hated the company. I used to be I was a partner. I could not stand working with the company. And I
Don't
always
hold
had
back.
a-
Tell us.
I've
how
always
you
had a
really feel.
relationship with the company that, I've always had, there are always islands within the company. I've had a lot of good friends there and middle management and so on and so forth. But what you've done, and I am really attributing this to you guys, and I don't think unduly either, is by building Redwood and by doing what you've done and by also understanding the cultural impact you've had, is you've literally transformed the company in a way that is, to me, one of the biggest transformations to a level where I am thrilled with what the company is doing right now, that I've seen in years and years for any company, bar none. So one of the things I'm really curious about before we get into the kind of the details of that is how you two even know each other, really, right? I mean, I don't know that.
Is this when Bonnie met Clyde? Is this what we're getting ready to do here?
The backstory.
Is that backstory?
It's been so long, I don't even remember, but I guess it's Microsoft. We met at Microsoft.
Wow. How long ago was that, roughly?
20 years ago.
Really?
Wow, nice.
So you guys have been working together for 20 years?
That's amazing.
Yeah, since you're like 9 each, right? So it's like you're very young looking for somebody who's worked together for 20 years, the two of you. All right, well, look, so here you are, you're at Oracle and you've been doing Redwood. So why don't you kind of, look, we have this is a pretty intelligent audience out there. There's a lot of people in our universe, one we're all in. And I'm kind of curious as to kind of your actual thinking on that led to Redwood as opposed to Redwood itself first. How you guys are thinking, how you thought about it, what led you to decide, what were some of the elements you took into account that said, okay, well, since we're at Oracle, not Microsoft particularly now, we're at Oracle now, this is how we need to do it at Oracle as opposed to, say, a Microsoft. But within the design principles and the elements that you already, are knowledgeable about and have designed, created yourselves. I mean, how did you think about that?
Why don't Jenny, I'll take the first little bit and then I'll hand off to you. We can talk about the sort of the 4 values that we try to embody. Does that sound like a good division of labor?
Sounds great.
Cool. So, we're really lucky. I want to be really clear about it. First of all, thank you for all the nice words. Very complimentary and very sweet. And we love talking to you guys. The second thing that I would say is, I think Jenny would agree with me when I say we have not changed the culture at Oracle. We have not done anything. We were lucky to show up at a moment when everyone at Oracle had a shared vision, or had a vision, I would say, around what Oracle could be and how and what they aspired for Oracle to be. And that is not we call it a moment of renewal. And renewal is to make something even stronger, right? Something that was strong to make it even stronger or strong again. So it's not a reflection that, oh, things weren't good or we were heading in the wrong direction. It's really saying, okay, we've gotten this far, but we still have a ways to go. How can we do better going forward? Where are the areas that we want to improve? And we just, Jenny and I have been trying to do this for a long time at big tech companies. And when we got to Oracle was the first company, and this is no disrespect to any other company we worked at, where not only were they hungry for the kind of cultural change we wanted to bring, but they really felt it was a top priority. And they said, look, we have talented people working on the user experience here. We've worked on it. We have some good things that we're proud of, but we want to do even better. And we don't just want to do better. We want to do better in a way that's differentiated. In other words, we'd like to make user experience not a checkbox, but something that we can hang our hat on as a differentiator across the entire industry. And in CRM, in enterprise, and frankly, in technology, period. At no point has any senior leader told us to pull our punches and say, well, don't go too far. It's enterprise after all. They're like, no, let's go for it. Let's make the best holistic user experience that the industry has seen. And what Jenny and I, sorry to go on and on, but I'll just wrap it up with, what Jenny and I did was we didn't go in with a preconceived notion of what the right answer was. We just went and did a lot of listening. And what we found was actually a kind of vibrant yearning for this next accomplishment around creating an experience that changed the way people perceived Oracle and the way people interact with it. And it came down to these 4 values that really were very compelling, that Larry himself got very excited about. That's your cue, Jenny.
Okay, that's I've never done this before live, so it's very interesting.
We're learning how to do this together.
Yeah. Well, like Hillel said, when we did our listening, what came through, especially, I think what struck a chord with me was the humanity of the people that we were working with. It really, the maturity, the steadiness, and not, like Hillel said, not one single executive sort of turned us away or told us we were crazy. They were all very encouraging. This is the right time to do this. This is what can we do to help? And we brought in these 4 values that help anchor us as a design system, as a design organization, as a brand, starting with humans, human-led. So even the way that we use our words and how we speak to our customers and prospects, we even have this little litmus test where would you turn to somebody on your right and actually say that marketing message? Would it sound like you could say it to a friend? So human-led became a really big principle, a big value in an anchor for our design system. Aspirational, this is what Hillel spoke of before, about wanting to be better in that growth mindset, and not pulling our punches. I think that the third one, intelligence, is from the intelligence and the insights we seek from data. It felt like a natural anchor, one that's always been part of our DNA, but maybe it hasn't really come through in our narrative. And then lastly, sophisticated. Yes. Actually, this sophisticated is a really exciting one for visual designers and aesthetics, because it's and it used to be sort of behind the scenes. It started out as premium. But we didn't want to associate a price to it. It was really around the complexity of the problems that we help solve, that they're sophisticated, and the user experience should feel, really elevated, and that it can solve very, complex problems and feel really, high end. So that combination of human-led and sophistication sometimes are at odds with one another, and I think Redwood is headed in that direction of finding that right balance.
So, one of the things that's sort of striking, though, is you're dealing. If I'm, let's say, at an Oracle event, or I'm seeing something Oracle's producing, or I'm reading something Oracle, some piece of collateral that, let's say, was content that was shipped to me, Redwood is apparent in everything now. It's apparent on the mobile side, it's apparent in the applications, and in the clouds, and it's apparent in everything you're doing. One of the things that's strikingly interesting to me is, and actually your point, Jenny, is the first point is it's very warm. It's what you do is very warm. I mean, when I say that, I mean emotionally warm, right? You actually feel comfortable in what you see, and you feel, I guess the best way, you feel like you're not going to have a problem with it, and that's sort of the way. Actually, that's a huge compliment. It's not,
It is.
Well, because I mean, if you look at UIs and just the way content is generally put together, you almost always have a problem with there's something jarring or grating that bothers you somewhere. But the real interesting question is, look, I mean, I'm a 70-year-old guy, so I'm not necessarily typical of who you're talking to, right? And you are dealing with a lot of different, let's say, generational requirements. I mean, ultimately, you're dealing with, the one thing I've learned over time is, I don't care what generation you are, you end up like your parents, one way or the other, right? Ultimately, you end up like your parents. So there's that common thread that's going to keep running through you if you're 20 or if you're 70, right? So, but the question is, how do you look at Oracle's, employees or customer base, it's as diverse as I'm saying here, right? It's just that, how do you actually design to that diversity? Because that's not easy. The metaphors are all different.
Yeah, and there's so many vectors to that too. One thing that we don't talk about a lot, but that was a really big inspiration around diversity was not only generationally, but internationally. Like, we are in literally every country in the world. And an interesting thing about design, the design geeks in the audience will pick up on this, but visual design and aesthetics, what as a community of designers around the world, what we put up on a pedestal is usually Western, European, minimalist design, but that doesn't represent, the other half of the world. Yeah. And so we, as a starting point, we didn't start from Western European design for inspiration. We looked at Aboriginal art, we looked at African art, we looked at Japanese art, and we just started there and looked around us and saw a totally different aesthetic that drew us to that, to more human, and to more aspirational. And it was really striking how different it was from every other design language, not only in tech, but, in global brands around the world. So that was one approach. Hillel, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I love that. I mean, and you can even see the layers. Like, we looked there, we started looking across the world, both to look for something differentiated. Like, we think very strongly about differentiation all the time. We don't want to be just a Me Too. But second of all, what we found there was forms that helped us express our values, right? Around human-led, around aspirational, things that felt organic and not machined, right? Like, you look at it, a lot of tech companies and a lot of big companies in general feel kind of faceless sometimes. Yeah. And we really wanted to emphasize the people at Oracle and how that really differentiated us. So I love how it's turned out. And like Jenny said, we're not done. We got a lot of work to do to keep going on, keep refining, keep learning, keep evolving, and keep making it better. So we're psyched. We have a lot of work ahead of us.
I've got a question. I'm really intrigued by what you said, Jenny, about the sophistication design cue, because my mind immediately goes to a sort of spectrum that's got sophisticated at one end and simplistic on the other. And it strikes me that what you guys are doing, and you said as much, is really trying to tackle some very complex challenges. And a lot of that ultimately comes down to the UX, right? I mean, how are you guys approaching this idea of managing complexity through the design work that you're doing so that you're not eliminating where that complexity is helpful and necessary, but you're also not making it sort of needlessly difficult, if that makes sense?
You want to take a stab, Jenny?
Yeah, I think your minimalist interaction design topic is in here.
Okay, cool. So I love that question, Nicole, and thank you for it. I think when we first arrived, so we were given a talk and someone raised their hand and said, I know that you're a designer and you want to make things, simple and easy and intuitive, but we have very complex software and very complex scenarios and power users. And, we can't dumb it down for them. And what I said to them is, I said, first of all, we don't want to dumb anything down for anybody. We don't need to do that. Second of all, we're not, as designers, we're not looking to, and this is no disrespect to Instagram or social media, but we're not looking to make another photo sharing app. We want challenge, and a challenge of how you do supply chain software and allocate resources and deal with, delays in the manufacturing line and route trucks. Like, that is what we would call, this may sound funny, like juicy. Like, that's exciting. That is a lot of meat to sink your teeth into and find ways to deliver high quality user experiences that embrace that complexity. So I never thought of complexity and simplicity is some sort of tension. I think there are complex things that people need to do, and that's the best place that software can help. If something's really easy to do, software is going to add only so much value. But if something's complex, software has an opportunity to add a lot of value. And I believe that by focusing with incredible precision and clarity on what the user need is, we don't just want to add stuff to the screen. We want to really have a deep understanding of what they're trying to accomplish, even if the software didn't exist, and then tune the experience to that goal. And when we get that right, without any adornments, doodads, extra stuff that we think they might want or might, we usually can hit the holy grail, which for me is getting the customer, the end user, to feel heard and understood. I think that is the foundation for how you form a long-term relationship with a company, with a brand, with technology, with the people behind it, that you feel heard and understood. And that's what we're trying to make our designs do out of the gate. It's not my job to say whether we're meeting that bar yet. That's something you guys will have to decide and give us feedback where we're doing well and where we have work to do. But that's really the way we approach it. Does that make sense, Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me too, because this is something that, as Brent and Paul know, I sort of get bouncing in my seat about, because for me, this is really a crucial part of how particularly enterprise applications are starting to and really have to change. Because in my book, I go back to when I started my analyst career more than 20 years ago, and enterprise applications were really designed for the people buying them, and they were shaped by how the technology worked. And I think if there's one thing we've learned collectively from the consumerization of technology and smartphones is that if you design stuff that's intuitive, you get people to use it far more successfully and far more quickly. And I think the application of that kind of approach to the way people use enterprise applications as a work environment, in their work environment and in the kinds of work that they do, is really a revolution. And it's not easy to do because not everybody's doing the same job and not everybody's doing it in the same context. So it strikes me that you guys have, a lot of, you said it, a lot of work still to do. There's plenty, but it's like, that's got to be a massively juicy design challenge, as you say.
Years ago, I was doing some work on, it was right at the point where kind of the rise, it was during the rise of influencers and the rise of social and all of that. And there was a whole group of people who became part of studies, which was a person like me. In other words, you didn't really know the person. You just knew that their hobbies, their habits, their likes and dislikes were similar to yours and thus trusted them. So I wrote this piece I called it A Company Like Me, which is actually the optimal thing that a company can actually achieve. It's exceptionally difficult since the me is different in every single case. And it goes to a lot of what you're saying, which really struck me in the course of what you just were talking about, Hillel, which is, at some level, ultimately you're dealing with any customer of Oracle's or any prospect of Oracle's really taking a look at Oracle and saying, well, you know what, I see something here that I trust, and that I not only just I trust, and this is actually the trickiest part, I think, but I like, right? I don't just trust it, I like it. And I want more of it, or I want to be more involved. I want to interact more. I want to whatever. But I think, one of the things you've done with Redwood and is when I first saw it, and this I think it was at MCX in
Open World. Oh no, you're right. It was Martin CX. No, you're right.
It was like 2019 or 18.
Yeah, 2019.
Right. 2019. All right. When I first saw it, I actually saw that. I saw, wow, this is like heading to that company like me thing, right? Where across generations, across nationalities, across just individual likes and individuals with different likes and dislikes, there was an appeal to it that just was universal. And I didn't have a particularly sophisticated view of it at the time, but I did get that. It was an immediate, like almost visceral reaction on my part that I could see that. And I thought that was fairly exceptional.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I guess we have time for one more question. We have so much going on today. We have pandemics, we have social unrest, we have accelerated change, we have angry people, we have people that are hurting, we have empathy. Uh, where does all of this fit into how you create your designs when you have huge transformative kind of things taking place, when you have people en masse questioning, some of the fundamentals of what's going on? How do you try to bring all of that into a design that may be needed, that you may have to kind of create from the blue, basically, because some of these things that are taking place, nobody could foresee?
Um, I'll give my version of that. Like, uh, we don't operate in a vacuum. We're all human beings. We see what's happening around us. We're affected by what's happening around us. And, the sport that we play is a team sport. And there's no way we could do something of this scale without the hundreds and thousands and ultimately tens of thousands of people that we're working with on it. And so the way, for me, and this is my opinion, that I've tried to deal with this is with, an incredible focus on positivity, an incredible focus on vulnerability. And I don't, these may sound, oh, okay, great, easy, but let me double click on those just a little bit. I used to focus a lot on the end result, and I still care deeply about the end result and it being high quality. But what I realized is that my focus on the end result sometimes didn't bring everyone along for the ride. And I tried to make a conscious change in the way I interact with people where, and I'm not perfect at this. I'm a human being with all the inherent faults and frailties. But I try, my rule is simple. I try to say in every meeting that I'm in every interaction that I have with other human beings, employees, customers, whatever it is, at the end of the interaction, do they feel it was net positive? Are they thinking, I'd like to talk to that guy again. I want to work with that guy again. And if I can do that, then that creates the environment in which we can work together to accomplish something great. And so positivity is critical, being uplifting, I guess I would say. I want to lift people up. We could you could look backwards and tear people down, but it's just not worth my time, really. And I don't find it productive. And then the other thing that I try to bring to that situation is vulnerability, because I think I'm in a leadership role, a lot of luck involved there. It just happens to be my job and I got a fancy title, but I'm just a designer at Oracle. And I try to ground myself and I try to be vulnerable and transparent about my mistakes. And the reason I do that is because I want to demonstrate that we are a safe environment to grow. If you have an environment where people operate based on fear and they don't think it's safe to make a mistake, then they'll never grow and they'll never challenge themselves. They'll always take the easy way out. And what Jenny and I are trying to do and what the whole company's trying to do is bold. It's big and it's scary because, we could screw it up and there's a lot at risk. So I feel like you gotta focus on those two things, positivity and vulnerability, create the environment in which people can aspire to do something really bold, really differentiated and really great. And do it together, because that's the only way we can do that. We can't do this on our own.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that is, a lesson that I've learned from Hillel and his expert leadership is that, and something we remind the teams a lot is it's not just about doing the design and delivering the design. It's what's important to us is how it got done. What relationships did you form? Did you have a net positive experience learning, and iterating to get to the design? It's not the design itself. And so that's something that, is important to remember during this very stressful time in the world, and is motivating too.
Listen, I have one really brief last question. Jenny, is your Twitter handle because you love the font, or for have something to do with Switzerland?
Okay, this is a really embarrassing story. So my first year at Microsoft, straight out of design school, my first time interacting with a real, what did they call it? IRC, the chat client.
Right.
And I didn't even know what a handle was, or they just asked for a name, and I didn't want to give my real name. And I was actually going into a font forum, or I was talking, and I used the word Helvetica girl because, and I actually don't like Helvetica. I think it's really boring and generic, and every designer thinks it's the best font in the world, and I just think it could not be more boring. It's just, very neutral. So I don't like Helvetica, but that's my handle, and I've stuck with it.
We can have on the challenge of handles, but that's we don't have
Or you could actually, why not change it to a font you like?
Well, I stuck with it for so long that I feel like I've invested in it. Maybe I should. Maybe you're right, Paul.
Might be time.
I just want to say, Jenny, that last comment you made about the journey being as important as the ultimate design that you guys get to, that process, for me, that's really pretty profound, because that's really what we're all trying to do all the time, whether it's internally or with our customers, and kind of getting everybody, not necessarily on the bus, but at least on the same journey is pretty big in and of itself.
I think so.
Yeah.
Me too.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys taking time and
Awesome.
and talking design and letting us show clips of you building Legos and explaining what the Helvetica girl. It's those moments that really, all that other stuff is great, but it's those moments that really make this a lot of fun. So thanks again, and hopefully you'll be back with us. We'd love to have you come back.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity and really love your support and your advocacy, and also when you challenge us to do better, because we need that.
We'll help you.
I just got one last question. You guys wouldn't happen to be New England Patriots fans, would you?
Do you know that I watched an episode of CRM, this show, last night. It was the episode with the guy from who was a Raiders fan. So we are both New England Patriots fans.
Oh,
well, it was. We are rescinding the offer for coming back now.
Not only
have a good
that,
life. How about that?
but I was at the game versus the Falcons and sat there. It was like I finally went to a Super Bowl. I'd never been to a Super Bowl before, and I was like, I cannot believe I wasted all this money to see the New England Patriots destroyed by the Atlanta Falcons. The fans around us were screaming. The Falcons fans were like, "Woohoo, we're gonna win!" It's 28-3 at the end of the third quarter. I'm like, well, let's see what happens.
That is weird. I did not do that on purpose. As soon as you guys said you were New England Patriots fans, my connection literally dropped. I've never seen anything like that happen before, but I'm not kidding. I did nothing but sit back, and all of a sudden my connection, I was the only one there. It was weird.
Well, let's the other Patriots do this here now that it's we've got a new quarterback. Let's see what happens. You'll be able to enjoy our downfall.
That was really weird. And of course, I got to put up the New England Patriot fan stuff here, Bob Fagel. I swear that I did not do that at all.
Not totally good at spelling New England Patriots fan. I knew.
Okay. What a way for that show to end.
Good at winning.
I'm a Yankees fan. Remember?
All right, we're definitely ending this now. Why we still kind of like you guys. All right.
See you guys.
All right. For the two New England Patriots fans, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
And I'm Elle Nicole France.
We are the CRM Players, and we will be talking sports tomorrow. But guess what? We will not be talking about the Patriots.